Hello, it's Dr. Darnise coming on here live on your Sunday. Starting a little bit late, like 5 minutes late. I had a couple other things to wrap up before I jumped on here, but I see I'm early, waiting for some people to join. But as usual, I will start with the good old tarot and doing a spread for the collective. I'm just shuffling cards right now. Um, yeah, so what's up? What's up? I couldn't come on last week. So if you were waiting last week, if you happen to say, what happened to her last week? Um, yeah, I had to see a man about my taxes. You know how that goes. And so I was having my tax review. And as it turns out, we're not even finished. So I got to do some more about that. But anyway, here I am. And, it's my intention to come on at least twice a month with these Sunday live streams, giving us an opportunity to talk about some spiritual things. This time, tonight's chat will be about Dreamwork and the astral plane and what might be going on in our dream work. What is going on in the astral plane? And I want to share with you a book that I'm reading from a friend of mine who's a professor. Also, he's a professor at Louisiana State. So I'm reading his book about the Nation of Islam and UFOs, y'all. Because I don't know if you know, but it's a lot of UFO talk in the Nation of Islam, and Farrakhan be talking about it. So if you're paying attention, Farrakhan be talking about some UFOs. Anyway, yeah. So I am about finished shuffling these cards. Let's see what the reading for the collective is. Let's see. Oh God, why we start off with this? Three of Swords, heartbreak, or deep disappointment, y'all. The Three of Swords is about deep disappointment. And yeah. So let's see what else. Okay, we'll take that. Ace of Swords is when you have like an inspiration or a new idea, right? So swords always represent thoughts and ideas. So when you have an Ace of Swords, that's like a gift from the universe. As you can see, it's a hand, right? It's a gift from the universe, like a gift from God. So it's like that aha moment. It's that, epiphany. Like I got a better idea. Instead of being heartbroken, let me have a better idea, right? Let me think again about that. And then Four of Pentacles. Pentacles always have to do with money or our sort of earthly concerns, our practical kind of things that we have our mind on. So in this case, this is like got my mind on my money on my mind, and keeping it all close to my vest, right? So it could be, there's some disappointment going on and something having to do with like a financial loss or something to do with not feeling quite appreciated. This is general, so I'm having to think of lots of things that it can mean, especially with, this Three of Swords. It's like, okay, well, what happened where you're feeling left out? What happened where you're feeling betrayed? Where you're feeling some sorrow? Where you're feeling some deep disappointment? And it looks like it could be around money because it's like these pentacles. And then, the Four of Pentacles is like, I'm holding on to what I have. I'm holding on. And then, here comes my new idea, my new epiphany. Something is going to come through. Something is trying to show up, right? So even when you're in this kind of place of like dread or disappointment, you can always count on something that's going to come through, right? So let's see what, oh yeah. So I was going to say one more card. So we get the 10 of Cups, which means happy home life, happy, like things working out, right? This family on the card, they are celebrating and they've got like the whole happy home thing. So a full cup, right? 10 of Cups is full. So we're going to see as we go how the collective reading plays out. So, usually by the end of this, I see like, oh, this is why the reading was what it was, right? So depending on where we go. But even if you start with a heartbreak and a disappointment, you could end up with a happy home anyway, because you followed the inspiration. Follow your inspiration to get out of that, other mindset. Okay, so I said we're going to talk about, and then put some comments in the chat. Let me know who's here. Let me know who's here with me. Oh yeah, don't forget to join me on Patreon. I have the Patreon going, and I should say, I changed the name of our Patreon group, or at least one of the tiers, because I had the idea that we were going to do a book club, right, on Black history and stuff. And I think y'all had a different idea. You want to talk more just spirituality, right? I shouldn't say just, but like you weren't really interested in reading books per se. So I said, okay, well, let me change that. And because my intention is to talk about matters of deep spirituality, the esoteric, right, and the metaphysical. I said, these are the kind of things you talk about in a mystery school. Like back in the day, in classic times, right? If you were in Egypt, if you were in the Nile Valley and you wanted to go and get high spiritual knowledge, you would enter into a mystery school and you would be initiated, and you would have to go through all of the stages of becoming an adept, right? And so now that we have everything, right, we have access to everything on the internet, people kind of like, oh, I don't have to do all that. Oh, I don't have to do that. I can just watch this video. I can just do this. Well, spiritual awakening really takes a lot. It takes commitment. Takes our discipline. And so we had mystery schools. And so anyway, I'm naming the Patreon our Black Legacy Mystery School, because we're talking about deep spiritual things here. Okay. So join me over there, Patreon. The link will be in the description box when we get finished with this. Join me over there. And just to support the channel. All right. So I said we're going to talk about dream work and astral projection. And so I guess I'll be sharing some of my own dreams, or at least what goes on in my dream world, and asking that y'all do the same if you want. What's going on in the dream world? How many do you remember your dreams? Are you somebody who remembers your dreams? Do you have big dreams, deep dreams? Do you just have dreams that seem ordinary, like, oh, it's just my ordinary life, it's just ordinary stuff? Do you know what dreaming is about? Dreaming is when we really wake up. Y'all know we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Spiritual beings having a human experience. And so we get so caught up in our human day to day that we forget that. But when we go to sleep and dream, and dreaming is necessary. I know some people say, I don't remember my dreams at all, so it must be I don't dream. No, that's not true. Everybody dreams. You just might not remember yours. And I say that because we literally can't survive without dreaming. Like, we would go insane if we can't sleep and dream. We go into that REM state, the rapid eye movement. There's a reason, as being in a human body and with a human psyche, but a spiritual nature, we have to dream. And so dreaming is like when we go to sleep and we dream, that's actually when we're waking up. Our spiritual self gets to get some relief from being bogged down in the human body. And this human body is very dense and heavy, right? And so when you kind of come out of your body, when you dream, you get a break from it, and you get to reconnect to the non-physical. When you dream, you're reconnecting to the non-physical aspect of yourself. Now, how many of you are with me? Understand what I'm talking about? When you dream, you are connecting to the non-physical aspect of yourself, right? So you can have these experiences with your higher self. You can learn, you can travel, astral travel, right? You can come out of your body and astral travel or astral project. And all of these things really just remind us that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So the human is very much obviously in the physical, but that's not all who we are at all. Like this is the least of who we are. So we're doing some real metaphysics here today, some real esoteric, some real metaphysics here today. This physical apparatus, this physical aspect of our lives that we agreed to come into is the least, because the larger portion of ourselves still resides in the spiritual realm. The larger portion of us still resides in the spiritual realm. And when we dream, we can connect. That's how. So you might not remember your dreams, but rest assured you're having some REM, rapid eye movement experiences. You can't not. Now, some of you may say, no, I remember my dreams very vividly, because I, for one, do. I mean, I would say 3 nights out of a week, at least 3 nights of a week out of a week, at least, I am vividly dreaming, and I can what they call lucid dreaming. So I would need y'all to chat over here if you know these things I'm talking about. Who's here? Put some in the chat. Who's here? Hello. I feel like I'm in class, getting my students to participate. Lucid dreaming is where you are like awake in the dream, so to speak, meaning you're aware that you're dreaming. You are aware that this is a dream. And I don't know that I could say I have that experience every night, but in a way, yes, because when it kicks in, it's like, well, where was it all along? But sometimes I find myself in a dream and, hey, good evening. Hello, hello, prolific beats. Sometimes I find myself in a dream and I'm like, wake up from this dream, because it's either scary or it's, I always say it's on my nerves. Can you ever have an experience where you're like, this is so tedious? Okay, so as a teacher, and many of my teacher friends have a similar dream. We call it an anxiety dream around teaching. So around the first of a school year, I have this dream about like not being able to find my classroom. My dream will be that I'm in the building or I'm on campus and I can't find my classroom. Somehow or another, I'm lost, even though I'm in a building that I've been in a million times or whatever. Something very bizarre is happening. It's like the dream gets more and more bizarre. Like, do you remember the movie Inception? Did anybody see the movie Inception? Who was in that? Leonardo DiCaprio, and there's a whole cast of people. Really good movie. And if you watch it, you gotta watch it like 2 or 3 times, because that movie, you're like, what is going on? But part of what's going on in Inception is the longer you're in a dream, the crazier, wackier it kind of gets. And so for me, when I'm having one of those dreams, like I can't find my classroom dreams, or sometimes it's that I'm already in my classroom and teaching, and somehow my class just keeps getting bigger and bigger, meaning more and more students are in my class. And I'm like, why am I having so many people? Like, supposed to have 20, but okay, then it's 50. And then at some point in the class, this is the dream, right? It'll be like 100 people. And I'm trying as a, professor to kind of move around the room and make sure I connect with everybody, but I can't because the class keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's so frustrating to me in the dream because it goes on like this. And it's so frustrating that I will wake myself up. And it's like I hear myself saying, or direct myself rather, I direct myself in the dream, wake up from this dream. This is just crazy now. Or, if it's something scary, wake up from this dream. This is scary. And so that's what I mean by lucid dreaming, or that's how I experience it anyway, where it's as if I'm watching my dream myself, and or from on high, I don't know, from a disembodied place, I don't know. It's like I'm observing my dream, and I'm able to say, enough of this dream, enough, wake up. And I do. And then when I come to myself awake, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that dream was tedious. I had to wake up. So that's what it is to lucid dream, right? You are awake in your own dream, and you can. Some people talk about being able to change it on the spot as they're in it. They can change something like, oh, um, I don't know. Here's a doorway to go through or something, but they don't want to go through that doorway, so they'll create a new doorway in the dream. I mean, whatever you want to do, you can do. And the reason that that is possible is because we are visiting a non-physical world, right? Like this is a multiverse. This is a multiverse, and we are able to dip in and dip out. I just want to see if anybody, okay. I just want to check to see if somebody's trying to tell me that they couldn't get on or something like that. But it just reminds us that we can dip in and dip out in our spiritual path. Dreaming is another aspect of our spiritual awakening because it's reminding us that we're connected to something else, something bigger. So, keep a dream journal, especially if you're somebody who doesn't remember your dreams a lot. Then by virtue of you starting to keep a dream journal, it's as if you're saying to yourself, I'm going to remember my dream. Give yourself a directive as you go to bed. As you go to sleep, tell yourself, I'm going to remember my dream. And then when you wake up, write it down. And so that'll get you in the habit, right? That'll like let your psyche know, I intend to remember my dreams all the time. So let's keep this going, right? And so, I mean, I've had dreams where I wake up in the middle of the night and I write it down because stuff is going on. I feel like I'm downloading. And so to me, dreaming is very much an active spiritual exercise. And my best friend has to hear all these strange things. I'll be like, girl, I had a dream. And she'll be like, oh no, what? And I'll let you know too, I had a what's called precognition. Like I do have dreams where things, are predictive or precognitive. I'll know something in advance. But usually when I have those kind of dreams, I won't know what it is. I won't know, for example, oh, I just had a dream about this world event, and therefore it's a world event that's actually going to happen. I'll have a dream and it'll just seem crazy or whatever. And then, like, in some period of time, it'll happen. So, because you're on here with me, I'll tell you I dreamt about 9/11 before it happened. Like, I want to say, it wasn't even a month. I dreamt about the planes flying into the buildings and George Bush being on television, trying to explain it. And it was so disturbing and so like before 9/11, we couldn't imagine something like that happening. We could not imagine something like that happening. And so I had that dream. I dreamt, okay, some explosion happened. As I woke up, I was like, some explosion happened. George Bush was on TV. Y'all know he was president at the time, right? So George Bush was on television trying to explain it. And there was all of these like explosions going on. And it was so, and buildings, I should say, and the buildings were falling or exploding or whatever. So it was so disturbing that when I got to work, I worked at the University of San Francisco at that time. I got to work and I was sharing it with other people because I was like, I had this very strange dream and it's really bothering me and it's really on my mind. I don't even know what to do with this. And anyway, nobody, okay, it's just a dream, blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you, not even 2 weeks later, we know what happened. And indeed, George Bush was on television trying to explain like why this happened and how we were gonna, go get him or whatever he used to say. And so I went, to my colleagues who I had told this to at work. I went back. I remember there's one professor in particular. I went and said, "Do you remember that dream I told you?" And he said, "Yep, I sure do." He said, "I remember when it happened." He says, "I thought of you because you just told me that." And he said, and of course, we didn't talk about it at length because what can you say? He was like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't know what that is." And then he was like, "Wow, yeah, I remember. I remember you dreaming that." So there's other kind of dreams where I'll dream that I'm going to hear from somebody and then the next day they call. Like somebody who I haven't talked to in a long time. That just recently happened, right? I just dreamt recently that I was having a conversation with someone who I haven't talked to in probably 2 years. And he reached out on LinkedIn the next day. So all that to say is pay attention to your dreams because exploring our dream world is part of our being um, citizens of the multiverse. We are quantum entangled, right, with multiple aspects of the multiple universes. We're quantum entangled, meaning we got it going on in multiple places. There's stuff going on. And so in our dream work, that is a place and a time when we can reconnect. And if you do so consciously or with intention, then you can really gain from it. It can become a spiritual tool for you. And that's why I say, back in the day, people would go to mystery schools, people would have mentors, people would be apprenticed to somebody, and they would tell you, okay, this is what you can expect, or this is what you're going through. And no, you're not crazy. This is what happens when you're doing this and this, or this is the kind of, because we practice these sort of forms of magic, you can expect it to show up in your dream world. You can expect that you're going to meet your ancestors. You can expect that you're going to have a divine encounter because you're steeped in doing your spiritual work, right? If you're practicing some form of spirituality, you're going to, you know, it's funny to me, especially with my students, right? They're what, 18 to 22. They seem to be under the impression that you can have a spirituality, but kind of control it. Like, like people go to church on Sunday. And so their spirituality they shouldn't have to think about their spirituality any other time than the time they're in church on Sunday. Really? Then kind of your spirituality is dead. If you think you can only encounter your spirituality one day a week. Because really, when you're in your path, when you're in your practices, you're immersed in it. Right? You're immersed in it. And so anything can happen at any time. Anyway, so I wanted to just ask you, anybody else do any astral projecting coming up out of your body? Or you can observe your body, or you can go different places, because some people who are very skillful at astral projection say they travel, they go places, and they can like sort of visit other people. They can peer into what other people are doing. Now, I don't do that, or else I haven't quite learned how to do all of that yet. But for me, it's more like an experience of, knowing I'm asleep, having this feeling of coming out. For me, it's always out of my head. Like it's very much like coming up. I feel myself kind of like it's almost an uncomfortable feeling in my throat, like I'm gonna cough. And then I just sort of spring up out of my head region. And it's funny because like I'll spring up to the ceiling, like, like a rubber band, boom, right up to the ceiling. And then I'll be up there looking around and I can look and see my body. And so, it's a little bit weird. And when I first started doing it, I was afraid of it because It's a little weird. And getting back into the body was always such a rough landing. And by rough landing, I mean like just when you're on a plane and you have a hard landing, you know, and that pilot didn't quite, the pilot was struggling a little bit to land that plane and you hit that ground real hard. That's how it would feel to me when I was, in the astral, and then I would come back in my body, it would be a hard landing, and I would kind of wake up a little bit with a jolt. So, well, I'll say over the years, I've gotten more comfortable and better at it. So I don't have those like feeling of like, oh, I'm coughing to get out. I don't feel like it's a heavy, hard landing when I come back in. Now it's much smoother, right? Because of repetition, because of having mentorship, which I definitely have too, having mentorship of somebody who can guide you and say, yeah, this is what the dream world is like. And this is what happens when you dream. Allow for this. Um, allow for the fact that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And when you go to sleep, you are spiritually re-engaging with the non-physical aspect of yourself. Allow it rather than be afraid of it. Because when we're afraid of it, we shut it down, right? We go into panic mode and we shut it down. You can do some sort of protective rituals before you go to sleep if you're concerned about like, well, who all over there? Who I'm gonna meet? So, you could have some you you could have some like black stone tourmaline, black onyx, those black stones that are grounding and for protection. You can have those on your nightstand. You could have those. I don't recommend under your pillow. I'll tell you why. Black stones that are good for protection, like black tourmaline, onyx, um, they are grounding, right? So you might want to have, I mean, some people, you might want to have a tourmaline because you do want to come back, right? You want to sort of secure your grounding. But I will tell you, when you're trying to leave, when you're trying to astral project, you really want to get up and out. So you don't really want anything holding you down. So you got to kind of figure out, okay, how good am I at getting out? Will this grounding stone keep me too grounded? Or if I have one, is that enough? Okay, Michelle, what do you say? I had a dream where as I knew I was dreaming very scary, it was traumatic. I know, and see, when it's traumatic and scary, you want to wake up, right? So I've learned, well, I don't know if I could say I learned it as a skill. It seems to be something that I already knew how to do, but I had to learn to cultivate it. I had to learn to work with it, which is why I say, keep a dream journal. Get yourself in the practice of like, this is what's going to be going down. So I need to prepare myself. Let me see when I go to sleep how how aware I can be, how conscious I can be. You got to play with it. But something like when something's very scary or, undesirable going on in your dream, that really is a good way to practice because you want to wake up. You want to wake up. So anyway, thank you for participating in the conversation. But yeah, I have very vivid dreams, just very regularly is what I can say. Some of them are premonitions. When my grandmother was passing away, I knew it. It's like she came to visit me in my dream. Her spirit came to visit me in the dream, in the non-physical, and it was a whole dream of like, I don't know, it was a lot going on. But in the end, she said, I'm leaving now. My grandmother told me, I'm leaving now. And I was trying to chase after her. I remember in the dream, I was trying to chase after her, like, where are you going? What do you mean you're leaving? And she like kind of pushed me back and said, you can't come. You can't come. And my mother already passed. So I was like, well, tell my mother this, or I want to tell my mother this, right? And she was just like, get back, you can't stay. I'm leaving now. And so maybe it was a day, must have been the next day. Must have been the next day. My aunt called me and said, your grandmother passed. And I said, oh, she came to tell me goodbye on her way out. So, these kind of experiences don't have to be so unusual. Again, we just live in a world that, under Western civilization and under, worshiping the scientific method, these things get suppressed as if something is wrong with us if we are opening ourselves up to the spiritual realm, to the non-physical realm. The scientific method always wants proof. They wanted to adhere to the scientific method. It's like, well, that's not what this is. Although, you have some scientists who are working with people in terms of dream work, or people who are psychic, people who are mediums, and they're like putting those nodes on people's heads and seeing what actually happens to people when they are, channeling, when people are meditating, when people are asleep, so that science can try to make sense of it in a scientific way. But I'm like, read what the mystics have already told us. The mystics have already told us, okay. So I'm going with that. And because I stay, under my mentor, my spiritual mentor tells me, my mentor is Dr. Will Coleman, actually. I get his book down off the shelf, but he has been steeped in various mystery schools, including Vodun, right? So he is a priest in the Vodun tradition, I'm trying to say. So, but in a number of them, right? He does all kinds of ceremonial magic, and he is well steeped in so many spiritual traditions that pretty much nothing I can say, he's like, I already know about that. And I said, I know you know about it. That's why I'm coming to you about it. So anyway, the other thing I said I was going to do is talk about the Nation of Islam a little bit. But I got a book on the shelf, on the floor. Because my friend wrote this book. This is a friend and colleague of mine, Stephen C. Finley. He is a professor at Louisiana State University. And this book is called In and Out of This World, Material and Extraterrestrial Bodies in the Nation of Islam. And so I pretty much just started reading it, although it's been out for a minute, and I've had it for a while. And I'm going to see him in June. So I'm going to get him to sign it for me. It came out in 2022. And he does a lot of work with the Nation of Islam. He also does a lot of work with this stuff we call metaphysics and esotericism. So he and I worked on this book together. This is another one. This is an edited volume. You can see his name is up top, right? He's the primary editor of this volume, Esotericism and African American Religious Experience. There is a mystery. So I wrote a chapter in this book. Again, whenever this book came out, I don't remember. Like when people tell me, like, well, where's, or they'll tell me they read something of mine on the internet, and they'll be like, oh, I came across your article, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know which one it was. This was in 2015. So yeah, I wrote with him, or for him, in this volume. I wrote a chapter called The Self-Divine, Know Ye Not That Ye Are Gods. Now we're getting real. Know ye not that we are gods, the self-divine. And so it is about, this scripture that tells us that indeed we are God. Know ye not that ye are gods? Right? In the book of Psalms. Right? I'll let that sit with you and come back to that in a minute, because that's not what I was trying. I was just saying this is what else Stephen Finley does. Shout out to my friend Stephen Finley. I was just texting with him before I got on this live. Yes, Michelle, I was texting with a bunch of people, trying to keep up with my friend Stephen Finley. But anyway, where to start with this? If you know about the Nation of Islam, one, it's a Black nationalist religion, right? Started by Fard Muhammad in 1930, continued on, obviously, by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, then his son, Warathine Muhammad, and then Louis Farrakhan, as we know. Obviously, Malcolm in there. But Malcolm was never like the leader of the whole nation. Well, you probably are familiar with the idea. I mean, even if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? You read the autobiography of Malcolm X, shake your head, yes. If not, shame on you, go read it. Because even in the book, in the movie, you know, the Spike Lee, Denzel Washington movie, the autobiography, I don't think they cover the story about Yaqub, the mad scientist who is the one who creates white people, right? Like the blue-eyed devil that is, you know, part of the Nation of Islam's narrative. So I don't think Spike Lee does very much with it in that movie, to my recollection. But you know, if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, it's in there. And obviously, if you're reading things like Message to the Black Man or any of the nation's original Elijah Muhammad stuff, then you know it. But Yaqub, you remember? Okay, somebody say something. Yes, I know about Yaqub, the mad scientist who created white people. I can't be the only one who knows. Anyway, the idea is that, you know, Black people are more African people beyond Black, right? Black people are the original people. Black people are the original people, and that we come from off planet to start with. We come from off planet. Yaqub, the mad scientist, right? He's also Black, but he, you know, out of his frustration with the way things were, he decided to create um, an other, not Black, right? An other who would come up against the original people and subjugate the original people. Right? Are you with me? So when you really go into the narrative about Yaqub, then what you are presented with is the idea that we come from somewhere else, right? There is an extraterrestrial aspect to the Nation of Islam that casual observers don't pick up on. But, you know, if you listen to Farrakhan talk, he tells you about the mother wheel. He tells you about the mother wheel. And that he had visions, and Elijah Muhammad, like this where they went. Fard Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad, they went onto the mother wheel, the UFO. And that Farrakhan expects to do the same. So within the Nation of Islam narrative is this idea that our beingness came from somewhere other than this planet. We are here for a period of time, and then at some point, you know, I don't even know what to say. We're going back to the mothership, like Parliament Funkadelic said, like George Clinton said, we're going back to the mothership. Now, this intersects with the ideas of Afrofuturism too. So if you're familiar with Afrofuturism, you know, there's been a lot of Black authors writing science fiction lately. Octavia Butler has been highlighted since 2020, right? Since 2020, we've seen a whole lot more Black authors who are writing in the realm of science fiction and fantasy. Well, it's not new to us, but we've been doing that, but of course not getting much acknowledgement for it. It's kind of like country music. Beyonce dropped a country album, and people act like, oh, Black people were in country? No, Black people been in country. Black people have been writing about science fiction and fantasy and whatever, but just not really getting the attention around it. So now we have a whole intellectual discipline called Afrofuturism. And it's where these ideas intersect about Blackness and imagined futures, imagined worlds. What else is there? Because in typical science fiction, written by white people, directed by white directors, starring white people, Black people aren't even there. Black people are not in the imagination, so that when they're writing these science fiction movies, we're still not even present. So Black people said, well, of course, we got to do it ourselves. We got to do it our own self, right? Of course we do. We can't wait for white people to include us or do for us. That's our own downfall. When we just keep waiting as a people for white people to, like, even if we say we're waiting for them to do right, we're waiting for them to act right, we're waiting for them to give us, to treat us, justly, and we're just continuing to wait for them, that's not going to work. So, of course, with Afrofuturism, it's the idea that we are creating our own futures, off planet as well as on this planet. Anyway, what Stephen Finley is talking about here is the way in which the Nation of Islam they kind of theorize that, this life is not the only life. Being embodied as a Black person is not the only way to be. Right? So I'm doing some metaphysics for y'all, like asking you to stretch. And he does it a lot better than what I'm doing right now, just paraphrasing him. But, as I said, I just started. I'm going to keep reading this and share with y'all some more about that, or maybe on Patreon, I'll go deeper down the rabbit hole with this idea around ETs and UFOs. Depends if y'all want to know more about it, but I might just do that on Patreon. There is this idea that Black life is bigger than just this. And if you're a Black person who's ever even been out of the United States, you know that as a Black American, we get very much bogged down with what racism feels like and looks like in this country, how white supremacy operates in this country. When you go to another country, I'll say it this way. Oftentimes, Black people in other parts of the country are freer than Black Americans are. I wonder if you can get what I mean. Black people in other parts of the world are freer from white supremacy than Black Americans. You could disagree with me, but the reason I say that is because they don't expect white people to do anything different than what they do. Think on that. Black Americans, we're always expecting, we got to protest for this. We got to fight this. We got to make white people act right. We got to make sure they do this. We got to make sure they do that. In other countries, I was in Tanzania in like 2012 or so, 2011, 2012. I was told by people in Tanzania, TIA, this is Africa. Why are you worried about Mzungu? They would say to me, Mzungu is a Swahili word for white. Why are you worried about Mzungu? I'm going to type that in here so you know what I'm saying. Mzungu, Swahili for white. Why are you worried about what Mzungu does? And this is why I say they're freer than we are, because we be worried about what white people do. And they're like, just understand that's how they are. That's who they are. Why you expect them to show up differently? So why don't we just do our own thing and quit worrying about when are they going to do it for us or with us or allow it? That's not. So we know about a religion like the Nation of Islam, right? A Black nationalist group. They're like, no, we're going to do for ourselves because we cannot count on these people to do for us. So anyway, in the book, as he pauses, as he fleshes out this idea that what else is possible for Black people and Black life. And some of it is here we go back to being a Black American. Some of it is because of the terrors of white supremacy that people who do work in Afrofuturism are like, there has to be a better way. There has to be a different way, right? There has to be a different way where we're not on the bottom, where we're not oppressed, where we're not just, terrorized. So in an Afrofuturistic kind of way, off planet, maybe, science fiction kind of a way, is there another realm in which we exist and thrive? Now, a prime example of what I'm talking about with Afrofuturism, where Black people thrive. What's that movie where Black people thrive? What's that movie? You know that movie. Who's the superhero? It's a superhero movie, Marvel, right? It's Wakanda. Where is it where Black people can thrive? Wakanda. And when that movie came out, it was like somebody poured water on us in the desert. We just were like, oh my God. Because that's how deprived we are of a place or positionality in the world where we can not only survive, because surviving isn't the goal. I mean, in some sense it is, but don't we also want to thrive and have joy? Don't we also want to have love and joy and fun? And not have to always be looking over our shoulder about what Mzungu is doing. And so the fictionalized world of Wakanda became this like beacon to say, wow, we can have something like that. So Black people who do, Afrofuturism, who do science fiction, that's what they're imagining. Off-planet life, where we can get away from white supremacy and the way it functions. Also Afrofuturists. So, Parliament, George Clinton, right? They always got the mothership imagery. Sun Ra, have y'all heard of Sun Ra? Kind of, before George Clinton. And a lot of this is connected to ideas about ancient Egypt. A lot of this is connected to the idea that the pyramids were the African people created the pyramids, but with the help of extraterrestrials. And so you see in Afrofuturism in the arts and the music or whatever, they use the pyramids a lot, or they'll talk about, ancient Egypt and hieroglyphics and all this, because it's part of a larger imagination about who we can be. Who are we really originally as Black people? Who are we, and what are the possibilities? So in June, I'm going to a conference where that's exactly what we talk about. What are the possibilities for Black life that are, esoteric and metaphysic, not limited to the political, social world? Can you imagine something so great like Wakanda? Can you imagine a real Wakanda? So in this book, In and Out of This World, then Stephen Finley is saying, hey, there are ways in which in the Nation of Islam, they have already imagined another place to be and another way of being, but it is really who we originally were. And it's only whiteness that keeps us from being it. And that's because, so in their narrative, Nation of Islam, it's because of this mad scientist, Yaqub, who had the intention of undoing it all for whatever reason. Because I'm always like, but why? Why would this Black scientist, who was supposedly a genius, right? Because he understood genetics and whatever, could tease out, the genetics so that we could eventually have white people. Why would he do it? I don't know. In any case, That's what I'm presenting to y'all is how far outside of the box can you think? How far out of the physical, how much into the non-physical can you go with me? And that's what I mean when I say we're going further down the rabbit hole, when I say we're talking about spiritual awakening, um, the esoteric, the metaphysical, right? Who are we? We in last week I said, not last week, last week I was on. I told you what the point of it all, right? The point of it all is. What's the point of it all? Our spiritual awakening. That we remember that this is the matrix, that we're asleep in the larger dream. When in our waking lives are actually being asleep. Right now, we're actually asleep because that larger part of ourselves that is in the non-physical, that's who we really are. So right now, she's dreaming this experience. And when I go to sleep, I awaken in the spiritual. I wake up from the matrix. That's why sleep is so helpful and restorative. It's not that our bodies actually need, that much sleep. Let's just say 8 hours. It's not necessarily that our bodies need 8 hours, but spiritually, we need a break. We need a breather. We need to reconnect with what's on the other side, with the non-physical. So it is a psycho-spiritual experience that we're having when we dream. It's psycho-spiritual because it's like our battery. It's a battery. So when you wake up, you should feel recharged. Sometimes you don't. If you were in and out, of sleep, it's because your REM was interrupted. You didn't get enough rest. You didn't get enough of a charge from the battery. So you wake up and you're still groggy, or you're going through your day and you're still tired. Oh, I didn't sleep well, meaning I didn't even really get a good chance to connect last night. And if you do astral project and you get back in your body, remember I tell you come back in, you feel how heavy the body is. Because when I come back in and I wake up, I'm like, oh my gosh, this body is so heavy. It's so material. And I feel it very much like this is such a heavy body carrying around. Anyway, that's what I have for y'all this week. And let me see. I'm just looking back at the cards to see what, I'm just going to close out with this inspiration card, right, that I pulled at the beginning. Pay attention to your own inspiration. Pay attention to the aha. Pay attention to what drops into your spirit. Pay attention to what might be trying to what might be trying to wake you up. What's trying to wake you up? Because when you're stuck, and really the swords represent mental, right? The mental. So if you got something going on that's keeping you here, allow for the new idea, allow for the aha, allow for the spiritual awakening. So that's what I'm about, doing these live streams. That's what I'm about. Seemed like there was something else I was going to say, but I can't think of it right now. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know if you were enjoying this. Don't forget, you can support the channel on Patreon also, or just give some thumbs up or hearts or whatever you do with the emojis over there. Oh yes, a little $. You can buy me a coffee if you want. I think that's what that is. Yeah, you can buy me a coffee. You can see a $sign over there. But I'd rather have you join me on Patreon. So, okay, bye. See y'all later. Bye.